Alright, lads and lasses, it's Tuesday already. Oh, you know, it's going to be a long week, isn't it? You can kind of tell. I tell you what, I want we have a little bit of a break from all this stuff. We'll look at something a little bit different. Let's look at some performance stuff in Power BI. Big topic, a lot of people are asking about it. It's something you should always be visiting, and I know it's something I keep going back to, because what I'll keep telling you about Power BI is it's iterative, innit? It's iterative. We've got a version of Power BI report, we've got our great data model, it's doing all sorts of stuff, we've hooked more and more reports into it, it's becoming more and more important to the business. What's the next step? We've got to add some more data. To add more data, what do we have to do? We have to look at the performance of it, make sure we can fit the data in. So performance is one of them things you keep coming back to. You've got to revisit it. You've got to learn. You've got to understand what's going on. You've got to figure out how best to manage it. Remember when I looked last week, talking about some of the stuff that goes on in the data model, the way it's all stored? Performance analyzer, and the performance helps you figure the rest out, right? So tell you what, let's start with some interesting things about Power BI. 4 rules. All Power BI visuals are tables, right? Fundamentally, everything in Power BI, all the visuals are tables. And them tables are fundamentally like pivot tables for those of you from Excel. Yeah? Next, all Power BI visuals are a fundamental DAX query. So a DAX query runs, returns a pivot table, and that pivot table is taken by the visual instructions and turned into nice pretty pictures and charts and that. Got it? Champion. Next two I had to figure out. Took a little while. First one, it was mentioned, it was a little footnote on a video I watched on YouTube. I can't remember, I think it was Guy in a Cube or something like that. But it said, Power BI visuals on a page are loaded in batches. Batches of 4, right? So if you turn around and you say, oh, I've built this great page, it's got 21 visuals on it, then you know you've got 5 loading cycles and you've got an extra one, so that's 6 load cycles they're going to be running, so it's probably going to be slower. But learning that Power BI visuals are going to load in batches is really important, because then you can think through how you're designing your page. What it's basically saying is they're not all going to load all at once, it's going to load in batches of 4. It's probably to do with something like CPU threading or something along those lines, but batches of 4. So have a think of that. Remember, 4 is the magic number for visuals. Right, the next thing, and this is a good one to know, because it's always something I've always said to people before, you know, I need to be careful with this because I didn't know and I couldn't be sure. I've had to check the day even, and it's like, Power BI will only load visual elements that are visible. Right, and that's it's great, not that. For the old school coders like you, back in the day I used to do all sorts of things, right? And it used to be, still load the elements of the page even if they're hidden. That's how it used to be. Power BI, fortunately, isn't that way. So you can hide visuals, you can make them appear, make them hide. It'll only load them when they're visible. So, you know, good to know in it, eh? Didn't say, I didn't always have your best interests at heart. So, how do we analyse performance in Power BI? The first thing we've got to use is Performance Analyzer. Performance Analyzer will allow you to have a look and see, for this visual, this is how long it takes, these are the steps it goes through. Part of them steps, as we say, is to run a DAX query. So we can get our DAX query out, we can fire it into a program called DAX Studio, and we can have a look and we can be like, it took this long to load. No worries, let's run that query and see how good it is. We can give it a go, eh? It's great to figure it out. Honestly, this is where you start though, because if you get to the point you go, the DAX query is too slow, it's not running right, that's where you end up going back to the back into your data modeling, reshaping it. You might even produce a table just for that visual because it's such a standard visual. You know, like monthly sales, it's a standard visual. You might get to the point of saying, we've built a monthly sales table just to be there, and we can then just pick and choose which months we want to show, because that's quicker than us having to build the table on demand and dynamically, which is what you're doing with DAX. So one of them things, one of the areas that you move to, and it's one of the things I find is you get people who we're doing everything with DAX, we're doing it all with DAX. And it starts to slow down in places. And then they suddenly become, right, what can we offset into the M? And you start moving bits in M. And then you're doing bits in the data model. And then be like, all right, what can we do even further down in the source before M? So it all starts to become really important and you start thinking through it. So don't worry if you're saying, this is slow, I can't work out how to improve the DAX, I might have to do something else. Because I might have to do something else. Might be, I'm going to do some data model shaping. Because honestly, if you reshape a data model and you do it good, and the way that Power BI works and the way it'll compress the data set, if your turner said, I'm going to have to build a table with 3 columns to fix this DAX query that takes like 20 seconds to run, chances are you're not going to be loading a huge deal of extra data in. You're going to have more on up front in terms of the processing power of running it through. But, there are things you can start to quantify, we can work through, we can understand the cost-benefit analysis of it. So it's all important, but let's have a crack on, Let's have a look at this in action, shall we? Here we are, back with a COVID data set. The only reason I'm using it is because it's a nice big data set that I've got in here. It's all good to go. It works for this, Let's look at first step 1, What I said was every visual on here is a table. Again, you're nonsense, man. What rubbish. Let's look at a map, right? If you hover over a visual, you've got the 3 dots at the top, haven't you? The more options. We'll click on it, show it as a table. Click on that and you'll see this is the table that loads behind the scenes for this visual. All we've got is a latitude and longitude and a value. That's it. If I put more values into a visual, they'll all be in here as additional columns and stuff like that. And we can prove it by going back to the report. Let's go and pick a different one, like the matrix table here. Click that, shows a table. That's the table behind the scenes for it. Strangely, it looks almost identical, doesn't it? Madness. Who'd have thunk it? Right? Every visual is the same. No matter how complex your visual, no matter what you're doing with your visual, it's all the same. Everything boils down fundamentally to a pivot table. We've got dates here, we've got confirmed, recovered, deaths. That's all we've got. Pivot table. Alright, those of you from Excel, you know that, didn't you? It's a pivot table. I could lie, I could make up all sorts of nonsense, but fundamentally, it's a pivot table. Right? That's all that's gone into it. But it's really important to understand that that's how Power BI works. Because that then leads on to a second bit, doesn't it? I said it loads 4 visuals at a time. Now, I didn't decide on the 4 visuals at a time. You didn't decide on the 4 visuals at a time. But it will load 4 visuals at a time. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at least on here. There might be a 10. But let's have a check, shall we? That's where we're bringing Performance Analyzer. So what does Performance Analyzer do? How do I figure out Performance Analyzer? It's dead easy. I go into the View page. So, from me home, go into View, go into Performance Analyzer. And that'll fire up Performance Analyzer on the right-hand side. Right? All I've got to do is click Start Recording and then start doing stuff. Best way to do it, though, click Start Recording and then refresh the visuals. That's great. That'll give you a baseline for your page. We can now see how long does it take to load the page. Now let's check. I said 9, didn't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I forgot I've got 9, 10, 11. That's 11. Can't think what the 12 is. Must be the head and end. Let's click on that. We can click on them and it'll take us through, show us where they are. 2, 3. Cases, we've got the cards, little cards which are hidden on top of cards, overlaying each cards. Which card's that? Oh, that's that one, So it is, that one. It's at the top, It's important now, but you suddenly see it. It's taking time. Only takes it 3 milliseconds to load that query though, because it's just a load of text. It's important to understand though, isn't it, that all of this stuff, it's going to add up, it's going to take time. So the more stuff you've got in there taking up time, the longer it's going to take to load a page. And this is why if you've got a page of visuals, like lots and lots of these tiles, you find it takes a long time to load, right? Especially if you've got visuals overlaying visuals like we've got here. Now, none of this is supposed to tell you, oh, you're not doing it right. At the end of the day, what I'll always tell you is if your visual drives the right actions, I don't care how long it takes. If it doesn't, or it does out else, then you've got an issue, yeah? So if this is going to drive the right actions and the right responses, it's fine. It's not a problem. But we can have a look through and we can see what's taking the longest for it to load. So we can see the matrix is taking a long time and we can see the maps taking a long time. Now, they're not really surprising, are they? You know, it's kind of the most complex elements on it. But let's have a look through. So let's figure out a bit more about what's going on, eh? So let's open up this one and have a look-see, right? This here, dead simple. The DAX query is taking 8 milliseconds to run. Oh man, I'm like, just great. I mean, that's like perfect. That is like, that's just like a really quick, slick little query to run. You see the visual detail or the visual display. So what we need to do for this is taking 31 milliseconds to run. And the rest of it to deal with other things is like another 234 milliseconds, aye? So what we can do is we can look at that and we can say, well, let's copy that query. Okay, and I can turn around and say, oh, I want to put that in a notepad. So we can fire up one notepad and we can bring it down onto the screen and we can have a look and say, right, let's see what's happening there, eh? Paste. Oh, what? I don't understand that, like, you know, how do I know what's going on there? That's kind of where you get it, isn't it? You know, like, you've got to figure it out. Where, you know, that's not particularly friendly, is it? I kind of need to figure out how this all works, what it all looks like. Fundamentally, as you learn it, you get the point of going, right, this is the important thing here. So we're going to take a sample of 3,502, because that's just what the visual can support, instances of it. And then we're going to summarize the columns. So we want the dates, and then we've got a filter here. So the filter table, it's all based around here. We've got a date filter basically. And if you look at what goes into this to view it, to make it, it's kind of based around days going back in time. So that's what you've got. You've got like a filter doing this. So I'm really, let's pick them dates going back. So we've got the dates for this in that range basically, aye. So we've got the unique values, because we've got values, which is a unique values thing. In the dates table, so unique values and dates between the 8th of June and the 6th of July. It's not rocket science, that like. And then for each of them, give what COVID-19 confirmed cases, what COVID-19 deaths, and what COVID-19 recovered. It's you know, it's pretty basic that like, isn't it? That's not rocket science if you ask me. So what we've got, is we've got like a system that's going to work out some DAX for each visual that you're going to build. And then for that DAX, it gets run. Right? So what does that DAX look like when it's run? That's what you kind of want now. How do I figure this out? So we can always go back in and we can right click and we can copy it. And this time, I can go into DAX Studio, can't I? So I've fired up DAX Studio here, right? And I've already connected it to my model. So I click connect. When you first load it, it does that. Hit connect on there. Alright, and I can then paste this in. So I've now got my DAX Studio with me text in it, or me formula, me DAX formula in it. Right? And I can hit run. And here we go. There's me outcomes. Oh, it's brilliant, that like. That's cushy. Cushy body, as you say, you know, when I was a bairn, when I was a young'un. Right? So all of a sudden I can see what's going on. Now, that in itself isn't that much help, is it? Where this starts to be really useful is we can carry on this. So do you remember how I said you can just refresh the visuals, see what happens? What would happen if I went down here and I want to know what's going on in the UK? So let's go on, scrolling down, find the UK. Let's open up UK, and we just want this one, didn't we? The main one. The main UK table. Right, and you'll see suddenly it's cross-highlighted, showing you all sorts of different things. This is now taking nearly a second to load that page. That was taking 273 there. So that's slowed it right down, hasn't it? As we've done that. So if we have a look in here, now, let's copy that DAX query now. Yeah? Now let's get back to our DAX Studio. Let's replace all this with this one here, and we can now see there's an awful lot more to this, like, isn't there? Yeah? So we've now got a filter too, where it's United Kingdom and the rest is blank, and the old geos this, and you see here, this treat as, honestly, treat as is something you see in these, right? Treat as is something you want to learn. So we'll have another video on treat as at some point, I reckon. But right, so remember here I had this, let's hit boom, gone. Right, it runs pretty quick still, but because it's cross highlighted, what has to happen is behind the scenes, this variable has to be worked out. It's all the important things you're going to learn. So as you start to see how your visuals interact with each other, you can use DAX Studio to define and export the query stack and actually see what's happening behind the scenes. And if you understand what's happening behind the scenes, it can help you build and shape the model, because what you really want to do is make sure that your model is efficient, and the more efficient you can make it, the better it's going to work for you. So I hope you can see just from a couple of little clicks around here, we've taken something that was just under a quarter of a second to nearly a second, and that's just from a change like that. But I hope we'd always say, you know, hey, we need to be able to good with these, like cross filtering, cross highlighting. It's all important, but it's important to understand that the more visuals you have on a page, the more batches of visuals you're going to have to load at any given time. But also then potentially the more rendering is going to have to happen on the page if you cross highlight stuff. So you'll see one of the things that we talk about is drill through and like ways of doing stuff like that with your data set, and all of it is about trying to balance the right levels of performance and snap in your data set as much as anything. Because if you get a good drill through and you build everything so it works well, you'll get more detail out, and it then means that you can always come back because pages will be cached. So you hit back and go back to the page, boosh, you know, and you can find that you've got your, you know, your drill down, which is what you want. That's the slow page. Rather than having to load everything up and refresh it around the whole visual, you're drilling down to the next stage. When you've got hover visuals on here as well, obviously they take a lot of processing because they're done at the point of load. So I think I've still got it. If we come back to the global here, I think it's the global I've still got it on. And we'll hover over here. The visuals will load. Aye. So let's stop that. Let's clear it. Let's start recording. Aye. So I hover over here. See, it's not showing out. Wow. So on hover visuals are a real pain in the neck with this, right? Because you never can tell. It doesn't work with on hover visuals. Hopefully it'll come through at some point, but I'll show you what I mean. We've loaded the page here. Hover over here over Brazil. Here's my data set for Brazil. If I go elsewhere, here's my data for that. It's not showing it, right? And I can look and I can see here, I can copy the query. We can paste our query into DAX Studio and run that. The data's not there, so well, nah, that's not right. So something's not going on well. But basically what's happening is these are tips. So it's another page that's loading. So it's loading this page. You can see this is what it takes to load the page. It's worth being aware of. But again, visual level tooltips, the more you put on them, the more load they're going to have, because that page has to load. We can see here for this, it's taken that long. I could imagine if I put filters on, we could gauge the time. But really, it's all about understand what's going on with the page loads, understand the impact that you're having, and you'll start to find that you'll just naturally start to think in terms of how do I make reports and data sets really performant and great. So take care of yourselves, and you know, look after each other. Stay safe out there, everyone,